Elliot Weaver sat in his small, unassuming apartment on Earth, staring at the hollow message that blinked on the screen before him. The message had come from the distant planet of Zeloria, a place he'd only heard about in passing as a diplomat for minor interplanetary affairs. The news, however, was as unexpected as it was unbelievable. To Elliot Weaver of Earth, the message began in a deep, resonant voice. You have been named as an heir to the late King Zorath of Zeloria. As per the king's final will, you are to inherit a portion of his estate, including lands on Zeloria, and to wed his daughter, Princess Thalia. Elliot blinked, trying to process the gravity of what he'd just read. An estate? A marriage? To an alien princess? It didn't take long for the whispers to start. The Galactic Council, where Elliot had occasionally presented Earth's diplomatic concerns, quickly became a hub of gossip. News spread like wildfire through interplanetary channels. A human of modest standing, inheriting land and marrying the daughter of one of the galaxy's most powerful rulers? And not just any daughter, but Princess Thalia, the most overlooked and ridiculed of King Zorath's children. Thalia was known throughout the galaxy, but not for reasons one would expect of a royal. Her appearance was considered peculiar even by her own people, the Zelorians, who prided themselves on their sleek, shimmering features. Thalia, in contrast, had rough, dark scales that gleamed awkwardly in light, a mismatched symmetry to her limbs, and sharp ridges across her forehead that others found unsettling. She had often been relegated to the background during royal events, quietly participating but never noticed. As Elliot packed his few belongings and prepared for the long journey to Zeloria, he was acutely aware of the weight of public opinion against him. Galactic representatives from more prominent planets had openly mocked him, calling his inheritance a farce and his upcoming marriage a spectacle. The Galactic Council wasn't kind to humans, often seeing them as a lesser species in the broader tapestry of the universe. Elliot knew that accepting this inheritance would subject him to even greater scrutiny. But deep down, Elliot wasn't driven by a desire for wealth or status. He was driven by the simple, human urge to make a difference, to connect. There was something intriguing about this strange turn of events, something about Princess Thalia that made him curious. She had been scorned by the galaxy, much like he had, and perhaps in that shared alienation, he would find something more. The moment Elliot arrived on Zeloria, the atmosphere was thick with condescension. The Galactic Council had arranged an informal gathering to welcome the new heir, though the event felt more like a stage for ridicule. Representatives from various planets, tall, elegant beings with flowing robes and sharp, judgmental gazes, filled the hall. The murmurs and whispers were impossible to ignore. "Is that him?" one voice asked, incredulous. "The human marrying Thalia?" "I expected someone taller," another scoffed, glancing at Elliot's modest frame. Elliot stood silently, his posture upright, but his stomach churned with anxiety. He had faced tough diplomatic negotiations before, but nothing like this. He could feel the weight of every eye in the room, and the unspoken question hanging in the air. Why would he agree to marry her? As he walked further into the hall, the holographic screens at the edges of the room displayed images of Princess Thalia, who had yet to make her entrance. The images, captured during various public appearances, focused on her unusual appearance, exaggerating the features that alien cultures found strange or off-putting. Elliot felt a flash of anger rise within him. How could they treat her this way? This daughter of a king, simply because she didn't fit their narrow standards of beauty. He approached the central podium, where several members of the Galactic Council stood, including Zeloria's current regent, Lord Ardek, who was temporarily overseeing the kingdom after the death of King Zorath. Elliot Weaver, the new heir to Zelorian lands and soon-to-be husband of Princess Thalia, Ardek announced with a sneer that was barely concealed. "Tell me, human, do you understand the responsibilities that come with such an inheritance? Not just managing land, but becoming part of our royal family?" The crowd chuckled. Elliot clenched his fists, steadying his voice as he answered. "I understand the weight of responsibility, Lord Ardek. I also understand that inheritance is not about entitlement, but about duty." "Indeed?" Ardek raised an eyebrow. "And what of your bride-to-be? Princess Thalia is unique. Are you prepared for the life you'll share with her?" Another ripple of laughter ran through the crowd. Elliot resisted the urge to snap back, instead choosing his words carefully. Princess Thalia may not be like the others in your court, but that only makes her more remarkable. I came here to honor the late king's wishes and to build a future with her, not for appearances, but because I believe there is more to a person than what we see. The laughter died down, and a few of the dignitaries exchanged uneasy glances. Elliot's words had landed harder than they had expected. At that moment, the doors to the hall swung open, and all attention turned to the entrance. Princess Thalia entered, her head held high, though Elliot could see the nervousness in her eyes. Her dark scales shimmered under the lights, casting an unusual but captivating glow. She walked with grace, even as the council members eyed her with poorly disguised curiosity and contempt. Elliot's breath caught for a moment, not because of her appearance, but because of the quiet strength she exuded, despite the mockery she surely felt. Thalia made her way to Elliot's side, offering him a small but genuine smile. "Welcome to Zaloria," she said softly. "Thank you, Princess," Elliot replied, meeting her gaze. "It's an honor to be here with you." And as they stood together, facing the jeers and judgment of the galaxy, Elliot realized something important. This was not just about inheritance or duty. It was about standing with someone who had been judged unfairly, just as he had been. And in that moment, a bond began to form between them, one that neither the Galactic Council nor the galaxy's prejudices could break. The first days of Elliot's new life on Zaloria were a whirlwind of customs, traditions, and ceremonies. Despite the ridicule from the Galactic Council, he found himself drawn deeper into the rich culture of the planet and its people. But the most significant aspect of his new life was his relationship with Princess Thalia. Their first true conversation took place in the palace gardens, a stunning expanse filled with vibrant, bioluminescent flora that glowed softly under the moonlight. Elliot was still grappling with the overwhelming attention from the court, and Thalia seemed to sense his discomfort. "Come," she said gently, gesturing for him to join her by a cascading waterfall. "The gardens are the only place where I can escape the noise of the court." Elliot followed her, relieved to be away from the judgmental eyes of the council members. As they stood by the water, he could feel the tension begin to dissipate. Thalia's presence was calming, and he appreciated the way she seemed to understand his struggles. "I know this must be overwhelming for you," Thalia began, her voice soft yet resolute. "You're stepping into a world where every move is scrutinized, every word weighed. I've faced my fair share of scrutiny back on Earth, but this is different," Elliot admitted, glancing at her. "Your people seem to have already made up their minds about me, and I'm just here to support you." Thalia sighed, her expression reflective. "I've spent my life feeling like a shadow among my sisters. They are beautiful and admired, while I've often been dismissed. It's difficult for me to navigate this new reality as well. I never imagined someone like you would choose to marry me." Elliot turned to face her fully, his gaze earnest. "I didn't choose you for appearances, Thalia. I see you for who you are, a brilliant mind, a strong spirit. You've been brave in the face of prejudice, and that's what truly matters." Her eyes widened, and for a moment Elliot saw a flicker of hope in them. "You really believe that?" "Absolutely," he replied. "We can change perceptions together. I'm here to support you, and I want to understand your world better." Encouraged by his words, Thalia began to open up, sharing stories of her childhood and the challenges she faced as the ugly princess. She spoke of the kindness she had experienced from commoners who had seen her for who she was, and how the court's coldness had often left her feeling isolated. As they talked, Elliot realized that beneath her rough exterior lay a heart full of compassion and wisdom. The more he listened, the more he admired her strength. It was in this intimate moment that a genuine connection began to blossom between them, one built on understanding and shared experiences. Over the following weeks, Elliot and Thalia grew closer, their bond deepening as they navigated the complexities of court life together. They often met in the gardens, sharing laughter and ideas, discussing how to transform the perceptions surrounding them. Elliot helped Thalia prepare for the upcoming council meetings, where they would present their vision for a more inclusive Zetherian society. Thalia's confidence blossomed with each passing day. With Elliot by her side, she found her voice, standing up against the whispered slights and derision that still lingered in the council chambers. In their discussions, she began to formulate a plan, one that aimed to create programs that would elevate the status of those marginalized in Zatherian society, much like she had been. Imagine a council that includes representatives from all walks of life, Thalia proposed one evening, her eyes sparkling with passion. Not just the aristocracy, but artisans, farmers, and even those from the outer settlements. We could create a true representation of our people. Elliot nodded enthusiastically. That's brilliant, and we can frame it as a step toward unity, showing the council that including diverse voices only strengthens our society. The excitement between them was palpable, and as they brainstormed ideas late into the night, Elliot felt a shift within himself. He was no longer just a diplomat caught in a political storm. He was becoming an advocate for change alongside Thalia. However, their growing partnership was not without challenges. The council, still dominated by traditionalists, was resistant to Thalia's ideas. They questioned her motives and Elliot's involvement, suggesting that he was merely a puppet master manipulating her decisions. The whispers of discontent grew louder, and Thalia felt the weight of her family's expectations pressing down on her once more. One afternoon, as they were leaving a council meeting, Thalia's sister Celine intercepted them, a smug smile plastered across her face. "Still pursuing your little fantasies, I see," she said, her tone dripping with condescension. "How quaint. You really think you can change the minds of those who've been here for centuries?" Thalia's posture stiffened, but before she could respond, Elliot stepped in, his voice steady. "Thalia is not just pursuing fantasies, she's striving for progress, something that can benefit us all, including you, Celine." Celine's expression twisted in irritation. "What would you know of our culture? You're an outsider, a mere human who has no place here." Elliot felt anger rise within him, but he took a deep breath. "I may be human, but I understand the value of inclusion. It's what we fought for on Earth, and it's what Zatheria deserves as well." Thalia placed a hand on Elliot's arm, calming him. "I'm not ashamed of my dreams, Celine. We can either embrace change or cling to the past, but I choose to fight for a future that includes everyone." Celine scoffed, her gaze darting between them before she turned to leave. "We'll see how long that lasts. The council won't easily be swayed." As she walked away, Thalia sighed, her expression a mix of determination and uncertainty. "I can't help but feel I'm fighting an uphill battle. My family, they've always seen me as the outcast." Elliot took her hands, his grip firm and reassuring. "Then let's fight together. You're not alone in this. I believe in you, Thalia, and I will stand by you, no matter what." In that moment, Thalia's resolve strengthened. Elliot had become more than just her husband. He was her ally, her partner in this fight for justice. As they prepared to face the council again, they knew that the road ahead would be difficult. But together, they would forge a path that would redefine the future of Zatheria. One where beauty was found not in appearances, but in the strength of one's heart and spirit. The day of Elliot and Thalia's wedding arrived, and with it came a mixture of excitement and trepidation. The ceremony, set to take place in the grand halls of Zeloria, was to be a spectacle unlike any the kingdom had seen. The galaxy's most prominent dignitaries and royal families gathered, eager to witness what they still viewed as an oddity: the marriage of a human diplomat to a princess considered unfit by many. The halls shimmered with golden light from the luminescent flowers native to Zeloria, and the air buzzed with the quiet hum of anticipation. Elliot stood at the front of the ceremonial hall, his heart racing, not with fear, but with a quiet determination. He had spent weeks preparing for this day, but it wasn't the formality of the event that weighed on him. It was the responsibility of standing beside Thalia, knowing they were defying expectations. As the soft melody of Zelorian harps filled the room, the grand doors opened, revealing Thalia. She was dressed in a traditional Zelorian gown that accentuated her unique features rather than hiding them, a deliberate choice to embrace who she was. Her rough, shimmering scales caught the light, casting a radiant glow as she walked toward Elliot. A hush fell over the crowd, and for a brief moment, no one moved. Thalia's sisters, including Celine, sat among the audience, their expressions unreadable. The council members, who had mocked both Elliot and Thalia, watched with thinly veiled skepticism. But as Thalia approached Elliot, none of that mattered. To him, she was radiant, not just because of the light on her scales, but because of the quiet strength she carried. She had endured a lifetime of ridicule, and today she stood tall, unashamed, and resolute. The officiant, a revered elder of Zeloria, began the sacred vows, speaking in the ancient tongue of their people. Elliot and Thalia, having practiced for weeks, recited their vows in unison, blending Earth's customs with Zelorian tradition. Elliot's voice was steady, his gaze fixed on Thalia's eyes. "I vow to honor you, to stand beside you in all that we face, and to build a future where we are judged not by our appearance, but by the strength of our hearts," Elliot said, his voice carrying through the hall. Thalia smiled, her eyes glistening with emotion. "I vow to be your equal, your partner in all things. Together, we will face a world that may not understand us, but we will stand strong in our love and in our shared purpose." The ceremony concluded with a traditional Zelorian blessing, and as the elder placed his hands on their joined fingers, the hall erupted in applause. Yet amidst the applause, Elliot could still hear the murmurs of disbelief and condescension. But for Elliot and Thalia, the mockery no longer mattered. Their bond had deepened into something far more powerful than the judgments of others. Together, they were ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. A few days after the wedding, Elliot and Thalia made their first joint appearance before the Galactic Council as husband and wife. The council had gathered to discuss important matters of trade and planetary diplomacy, but all eyes were fixed on the newly married couple. The mocking tone had not entirely disappeared, but now there was a quiet curiosity among the council members. As they entered the council chamber, Elliot noticed the subtle glances and whispers. Representatives from various planets, draped in their opulent robes and symbols of authority, watched them closely, expecting, perhaps even hoping, for a misstep. But Elliot and Thalia held their heads high, their movements synchronized in perfect unity. Lord Ardek, who had always been a thorn in their side, presided over the session with a thin smile on his face. "Ah, the newlyweds," he said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "How does it feel to sit before this council as members of Zelorian royalty? It must be quite the adjustment." Thalia, who had spent years enduring such thinly veiled insults, remained poised. "It is not the title or the ceremony that matters, Lord Ardek," she said evenly. "What matters is how we use our position to improve the lives of our people." Ardek raised an eyebrow. "Indeed, and what is it that you plan to do, Princess? You, who have been an outsider even in your own court." The room fell silent. This was the challenge they had been expecting. The council's test to see if Thalia and Elliot could stand their ground. Elliot stepped forward, his voice calm but firm. "We intend to push forward with a series of reforms that will not only benefit Zeloria, but also strengthen its relationships with the wider galaxy. Princess Thalia and I are introducing a new initiative, one that will allow greater representation for all citizens of Zeloria, not just the aristocracy. We believe that true progress comes when every voice is heard." A murmur of surprise rippled through the room. Thalia had mentioned this initiative to Elliot weeks before, a vision of a more inclusive future for her people, and now it was time to make that vision a reality. The initiative would invite commoners, artisans, and others from lower societal ranks to participate in planetary decisions, a radical shift in the rigid hierarchy that had dominated Zeloria for centuries. "And how," Ardek sneered, "do you plan to achieve this? You think the council will approve of such disruptions?" Thalia stepped forward, her voice clear and unwavering. "The council does not have the final say over Zelorian matters. My father's legacy was one of progress, and Elliot and I are committed to continuing that legacy. The people are ready for change, and we will give them the representation they deserve." Ardek's smirk faded, and the room grew tense. The council members exchanged looks, some of them clearly impressed by Thalia's newfound confidence. Others, however, were less convinced. "This initiative," one council member began, "is ambitious, but ambition alone will not sway the traditions of Zeloria, Princess. What makes you believe the people will support such a radical shift?" Thalia met the council member's gaze without flinching. "Because I have lived in the shadows of those traditions all my life. I know what it feels like to be overlooked, to be told you don't belong. And there are countless others on Zaloria who feel the same. I am not just the daughter of a king. I am a representative of those who have been silenced. And together, with my husband, we will make sure their voices are heard. Elliot felt a surge of pride at Thalia's words. She had risen above the mockery, above the expectations placed upon her, and had become a leader in her own right. The room was silent, the council members processing what had just been said. It was clear that Thalia's words had left an impact. Whether or not they would immediately embrace her ideas remained to be seen. But one thing was certain. She had earned their respect. Ardek, now visibly uncomfortable, cleared his throat. Well, we shall see how this initiative unfolds. For now, the council will consider the proposal. As the session ended, Thalia and Elliot exited the chamber side by side, their heads held high. They had faced the council's mockery, and they had not only survived it, they had thrived. Outside, in the light of Zaloria's twin suns, Thalia turned to Elliot, her expression softening. Thank you for standing with me today. I couldn't have done this without you. Elliot smiled, placing his hand over hers. You didn't need me to stand. You were already standing tall on your own. I'm just glad to be by your side. In that moment, as they looked out over the vibrant city of Zaloria, they knew that this was just the beginning. Together, they would face whatever challenges lay ahead, bound by a love and a purpose that could not be shaken by the opinions of others. The winds of Zaloria carried an eerie stillness. It had been weeks since Elliot and Thalia presented their initiative to the Galactic Council, and while they had made progress in gaining tentative support from some council members, the real challenge lay ahead, convincing the people of Zaloria to embrace the changes. However, before they could move forward with their reforms, a crisis struck the planet. Zaloria, known for its lush landscapes and bountiful harvests, was suddenly hit by a devastating ecological disaster. The planet's primary food supply, a crop known as cerathium, began to wither at an alarming rate. What had started as a small problem in one region quickly escalated, spreading across vast swathes of Zaloria's farmland. Elliot and Thalia found themselves thrust into action. The crisis threatened not only the stability of Zaloria, but also the livelihoods of millions. Without the cerathium crop, the planet's economy would collapse, and widespread famine was inevitable. The council called an emergency meeting, and the tension in the air was palpable. Inside the palace's strategy room, Thalia, Elliot, and the royal advisors gathered around a holographic map displaying the affected regions. Farmers, government officials, and scientists all contributed their reports, but the picture they painted was grim. This is no natural disaster, Thalia muttered, her brow furrowed as she studied the reports. The cerathium crop has been stable for centuries. Something or someone has done this. Elliot nodded, his mind racing through possible causes. It could be sabotage. Perhaps there are factions who fear the changes we're proposing and are willing to destabilize the planet to prevent us from moving forward. Mira, one of Thalia's trusted advisors, stepped forward. There have been reports of suspicious activity near the central agricultural hubs. We have reason to believe that certain council members may have ties to corporate interests that stand to lose if Zaloria strengthens ties with outside worlds through the New Dawn initiative. Elliot's fists clenched at the thought. So this is about more than just opposing change. They're willing to starve millions to protect their own power. We need to act quickly, Thalia said, her voice filled with urgency. We can't afford to wait for the Galactic Council to make a decision. If we don't act now, it won't just be the crops we lose, it will be the people's faith in us. Together, Elliot and Thalia devised a plan. They would personally oversee the investigation of the crop fields, working with scientists and local farmers to identify the cause of the blight. At the same time, they would deploy their loyal forces to uncover the roots of the sabotage. As they prepared to leave the palace, Elliot took Thalia's hand. This is going to be dangerous. Whoever is behind this won't let us stop them easily. Thalia met his gaze with unwavering determination. We've faced worse before. We'll face this together. The first few days in the fields were exhausting. Elliot and Thalia worked tirelessly, joining the farmers and scientists as they analyzed the damaged crops. The cerathium plants, which once stood tall and vibrant, now lay wilted and brittle. The people were growing restless, and many began to doubt the royal family's ability to protect them. One evening, as the sun set behind the towering mountains, Elliot and Thalia sat with a group of local farmers. The mood was somber, and the air heavy with the weight of impending disaster. As they shared a simple meal, one of the older farmers, an elderly Zalorian woman named Jara, spoke up. "This is not the work of nature," Jara said, her voice steady despite her age. "I've tended these fields for over 50 cycles, and I've never seen anything like this. There's something in the soil, something that shouldn't be here." Intrigued, Thalia asked, "What do you mean, Jara? Have you found something?" Jara nodded and beckoned for them to follow her. She led them to a remote part of the farmland, far from the main agricultural hubs. There, hidden beneath layers of soil, she uncovered strange metallic devices embedded in the ground. They pulsed faintly with an unnatural energy, a technology unlike anything Elliot or Thalia had seen before. "This is it," Elliot said, his voice low. "Sabotage. These devices are poisoning the soil, killing the crops from the ground up." Thalia's eyes hardened as she examined the devices. "Whoever planted these is trying to destabilize the planet, to turn the people against us." Elliot and Thalia immediately contacted Miro, who sent a team to investigate further. As the team worked to deactivate the devices, evidence began to surface that linked the sabotage to a powerful corporate interest with deep ties to the Galactic Council. The company, known for its monopolistic control over agricultural technology, stood to profit immensely if Zaloria's farming industry collapsed. "This is a direct attack," Elliot said, fury burning in his chest. "They're trying to bring Zaloria to its knees so they can swoop in and take control." Thalia nodded, her expression fierce. "We need to expose them, publicly. The people deserve to know who is behind this crisis." In a bold move, Elliot and Thalia convened a public broadcast, addressing the people of Zaloria directly. Standing before a crowd of citizens with millions more watching via holographic streams, Thalia spoke with unwavering strength. "We have uncovered the truth behind the devastation of our crops," she began, her voice ringing out over the gathered crowd. "This is not a natural disaster. This is an attack on our way of life, orchestrated by those who wish to see us divided and weakened." Elliot stepped forward, his tone resolute. "We have evidence that links this sabotage to external corporate interests. They sought to starve our people, to strip us of our independence, but we will not allow them to succeed. Together, we will rebuild, and we will hold those responsible accountable." The crowd erupted in cheers, the people's faith in their leaders renewed. As the broadcast continued, Elliot and Thalia detailed their plan to not only restore the damaged farmlands, but also to strengthen Zaloria's defenses against future threats. They would work with local farmers and scientists to develop new agricultural technologies, ensuring that the planet could remain self-sufficient. After the broadcast, the mood in the kingdom shifted. The people rallied behind Elliot and Thalia, their leadership now seen as a beacon of hope in the face of adversity. The sabotage plot was exposed, and those responsible were brought to justice. That night, as Elliot and Thalia returned to the palace, exhausted but triumphant, they stood on the balcony, looking out over the city. The lights of Zaloria twinkled below them, a reminder of the resilience of the people they had sworn to protect. "We did it," Thalia whispered, leaning against Elliot. "We stopped them." Elliot smiled, wrapping an arm around her. "We did. But this is just the beginning. There will always be those who try to tear us down." Thalia looked up at him, her eyes filled with determination. "Then we'll face them together, just like we always have." In that moment, Elliot knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would meet them side by side. Their bond, forged in the fires of adversity, was unbreakable, and together they would continue to lead Zaloria toward a brighter, more inclusive future, one where strength was measured not by power, but by the courage to stand for what was right. In the wake of the sabotage crisis, Zaloria entered a period of recovery, both for its people and its leadership. The public broadcast exposing the corporate plot had done more than just restore faith in the royal family. It had elevated Elliot and Thalia in the eyes of the galaxy. The Galactic Council, previously a forum of mockery and scorn toward Elliot and Thalia's marriage, now turned its attention to their leadership with respect. The council convened to formally address the agricultural sabotage, and for the first time since Elliot's arrival on Zaloria, the atmosphere in the council chamber was somber and respectful. As Elliot and Thalia entered the chamber, heads turned not in mockery but in acknowledgement of their efforts. The council convened to formally address the agricultural sabotage, and for the first time since Elliot's arrival on Zaloria, the atmosphere in the council chamber was somber and respectful. As Elliot and Thalia entered the chamber, heads turned not in mockery but in acknowledgement of their efforts. Lord Ardek, still presiding over the council, looked at them with a different expression this time, his smugness replaced with a measured tone. The council has reviewed the evidence of sabotage presented by the royal family of Zaloria. We are prepared to discuss how to prevent such attacks in the future. As they stood before the council, Elliot could feel the weight of their earlier struggles melt away. The room that had once been filled with sneers and underhanded jabs now listened intently. Thalia, standing tall beside him, began to address the assembly. This crisis has shown us the vulnerabilities in our system. Thalia began, her voice strong and clear. Zaloria was attacked because we were isolated, easy to target. But this is not just a Zalorian problem. It is a galactic one. No planet should be left vulnerable to corporate interests or hidden agendas. The Galactic Council must take steps to ensure the sovereignty of all its member planets is protected. Her words resonated, and Elliot could see the council members shifting in their seats, not in discomfort, but in agreement. The tide was turning. Elliot stepped forward to add to her statement. The New Dawn initiative we proposed months ago is not only about giving a voice to the people of Zaloria, but about strengthening alliances across the galaxy. By working together, sharing resources, and supporting one another, we can prevent crises like this from ever happening again. The council members whispered among themselves, and Elliot could feel the weight of his words landing where they needed to. For too long, the galaxy had been fractured by greed and self-interest. Now, with the crisis fresh in everyone's minds, there was an opportunity to foster real change. Lord Ardek, who had long been skeptical of Elliot and Thalia, cleared his throat. The council will deliberate on your proposal, but I must say, he hesitated, as though reluctant to offer praise. Your efforts during this crisis have earned you the respect of many in this chamber. What you have done for Zaloria and for the galaxy does not go unnoticed. It was the closest to an apology they would get from him, but Elliot and Thalia exchanged a brief smile. The fact that the council was now taking them seriously was a victory in itself. The session concluded with the council agreeing to establish a special committee to investigate and prevent future acts of corporate sabotage on vulnerable planets. It was a small step, but it was progress. After the session, as they walked through the corridors of the council building, representatives from various planets approached Elliot and Thalia, offering their congratulations and support. One representative, a dignitary from the planet Omnari, stopped to speak with them. Your leadership during this crisis has been extraordinary. If there is anything Omnari can do to assist Zaloria in rebuilding, we stand ready to help. Thalia, gracious as always, smiled and thanked the representative. As the dignitaries moved on, Elliot turned to her. It feels like the galaxy is finally seeing what I've known all along. You're an extraordinary leader. Thalia gave him a soft smile. I couldn't have done it without you, Elliot. You believed in me when no one else did. And now, together, we've earned their respect. Elliot squeezed her hand, knowing that their journey was far from over, but they were stronger for having faced it together. Back on Zaloria, the recovery efforts were well underway. With the help of the Galactic Council and the new allies they had gained, Thalia and Elliot led the charge in restoring the planet's farmlands and ensuring that the sabotage devices were entirely removed. Scientists, farmers, and engineers worked tirelessly to revitalize the soil, and within weeks, the first new Cerathium seedlings began to sprout. The kingdom, once skeptical of Thalia's leadership, now rallied behind her. The people who had once whispered about her appearance now saw her as a symbol of strength and perseverance. Elliot, too, had earned their trust, not just as Thalia's husband, but as a leader in his own right. One afternoon, as Elliot and Thalia walked through the fields, Now alive with the green shoots of recovery, they reflected on how far they had come. "Do you remember when I first arrived?" Elliot asked with a smile. "The council mocked me, the people doubted me, and I had no idea what I was doing." Thalia chuckled, her laughter light and warm. "And now look at you, leading a planet, standing before the council with such confidence. You've grown into this role, Elliot, and you've done it beautifully." He glanced at her, his heart swelling with pride and affection. "I couldn't have done any of it without you, Thalia. You've shown me what it means to be truly resilient, to lead with compassion and wisdom." They paused for a moment, standing at the edge of a field, watching the workers plant the new crops. The sun was setting, casting a warm, golden glow over the land, and Elliot felt a deep sense of peace. "We've built something real here," Thalia said softly, her gaze on the horizon. "Something that will last. Not just for us, but for future generations." Elliot nodded. "We have. And it's only the beginning." The New Dawn Initiative, once a radical idea, had taken root. Representatives from all levels of Zilorian society now had a voice in the decisions that shaped their planet. Artisans, farmers, merchants, and scholars sat alongside nobles and politicians, ensuring that every corner of Ziloria was represented. As the initiative spread, other planets began to take notice. What had started as a small reform on Ziloria was now becoming a model for other worlds seeking to create more inclusive governments. The Galactic Council, inspired by Ziloria's success, began to explore ways to implement similar programs across the galaxy. Elliot and Thalia had not only changed Ziloria, they had changed the galaxy itself. That evening, they returned to the palace, where a celebration was being held in honor of the first successful harvest since the crisis. As they entered the grand hall, filled with the laughter and joy of the people they had worked so hard to protect, Thalia turned to Elliot. "You know, when this all started, I never imagined we'd get here. I never thought I'd be anything more than the forgotten daughter of a king." Elliot smiled, his hand resting on hers. "You were never forgotten, Thalia. You were always meant to lead, and now the whole galaxy knows it." As they stood together, surrounded by friends, allies, and the people they had grown to love, Elliot and Thalia knew that their journey had only just begun. There would be more challenges ahead, more battles to fight, but they would face them together, just as they always had. And in that moment, under the glowing lights of Ziloria's twin moons, Elliot knew that they had built something far greater than either of them could have imagined. A future where they were not defined by appearances, but by the strength of their love, their leadership, and their vision for a united galaxy.